I'm Mike Tausnick, the former mayor of East Hampton, and I'll be serving as your moderator for this discussion about affordable housing in East Hampton. Our sponsor for today's program is the East Hampton Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership. They're an advisory committee to the City of East Hampton whose mission is to support and promote fair and affordable housing through education and advocacy, as well as to serve as a local resource for tenants and landlords regarding fair housing laws and complaints. Through this presentation, we hope to provide our East Hampton viewers with education about affordable housing by introducing you to some of our neighbors who will help answer three basic questions. Who are the people that live in affordable housing here in East Hampton? How does the City of East Hampton plan for affordable housing? And how is affordable housing actually built here in East Hampton? We have three residents here to speak to us about their experiences as renters, homeowners, and neighbors. Together, they represent single-person households, families, and seniors like myself. In addition to the residents who've joined us, we've also have two individuals here who are involved in affordable housing production and local permitting. And to begin the conversation, we'll talk to Jessica Allen, the city planner in East Hampton. Hi, Jessica. Welcome to the program.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here. And we're going to start off now to talk a little bit about the context and kind of what affordable housing is in East Hampton, because
Sure.
I'm not sure that we all understand it.
Sure. So I think it's important to differentiate between housing that's affordable and affordable housing. So when we talk about housing that's affordable, the standard is that you shouldn't be spending more than a third of your household income on your rent or your mortgage. And so it should be affordable within the context of your household budget. And we do have a lot of units in East Hampton that do fit into that category. The difference between that and an affordable housing unit is that there's no deed restriction. There's nothing that prevents somebody from coming in and taking that unit and raising the rent or upgrading it. So when we talk about affordable housing units, we're talking about those that have a restriction on those properties for a certain period of time, whether it's 15 years or 30 years or 99 years, that preserve that unit to always be affordable to folks that need it based on their income.
So is there some sort of a plan in place? And is this haphazard, or is this something that the city actually looks to plan for?
We look to plan, and the Housing Partnership in 2006 worked with consultants to first develop a housing production plan. That plan was then updated in 2013. And what that plan does is it does an assessment of the housing stock. It looks at the population, it looks at the market, and based on that assessment, the partnership with consultants develop a set of strategies and goals on how to move forward to ensure that we have housing stock in place that will be affordable to all of our residents in East Hampton.
And I know that that affordable housing is really a statewide goal. And how does East Hampton compare? I mean, are we like our neighbors from that perspective?
Sure. So the state goal that's set through the state laws is that 10% of a community's housing stock should be affordable, or deeded as affordable. So right now, with all of the new units that have come online between Parsons Village and the new units at 15 Cottage Street, we're looking at 7.28% of our housing stock, which is actually pretty good in comparison to some of our other communities. Now, some of the bigger communities like Northampton and Amherst, they've already hit that 10%. Holyoke, they've already hit that 10%. If you compare us to some of our peers like Ludlow, then we're doing much better than them. So I think we're on the right track. We still our goal is to hit that 10%, but we've made some big strides in the past couple of years.
Well, that's great. So are there specific challenges that we have to deal with as a community with affordable housing?
So I think one of the biggest challenges that we have in East Hampton is that we're fairly built out. There's not a lot of raw land left for development, especially for bigger housing developments. And as some other members tonight we'll talk about the finances of affordable housing, it's difficult to do really small affordable housing projects. And so without having that big pieces of land left, going into the mills or going into some of the existing buildings that we have and trying to rehab them can be extremely expensive. It's doable. It happened at 15 Cottage, but it has a price tag associated with it. And so that's one of the challenges, is just the remaining land that we have in East Hampton. The other is that we've approached the Housing Partnership and myself when local builders come in to talk to me about maybe buying a multifamily and they want to turn one unit into affordable housing and maybe preserve the rest. When you start to talk to them about the process to get that unit on the subsidized housing list, about the paperwork they have to file, and then after that, doing the income qualification for the residents that will live there, and they'll have to continue to do that. It's very overwhelming, and it's shocking to them, and so they just turn to walk away. It's not worth their time to go through all of those to jump through all of those hoops to get one unit on the list for East Hampton. So I think that's a bigger state challenge. I think that's more of a statewide policy. Are there things that we can be doing at the statewide level to encourage some of these smaller developers to come in and be able to build these units? Because that's really what will help keep East Hampton moving forward in terms of getting units continually on the inventory.
So to try to make it less challenging for someone who wants to do the right thing with affordable housing and doesn't really have the wherewithal to be able to follow all the rules that exist today.
Right.
So why is it important to have affordable housing? I don't.
Well, I think as a city, I think people we're changing, and we're changing very quickly. The demographics are changing. We're becoming wealthier. Housing prices are increasing very quickly in the past couple years. And so we still have a core population of low to moderate income individuals that have grown up here, that have family here, that want to be here. I mean, this is a great community, and everybody has the right to be in a great community. And I think it's part of our job at the city level is to make sure that those opportunities exist for anybody of any income level, to have safe, quality housing that they can have access to. And that's really a key goal and a mission for the planning department anyway, and I know the Housing Partnership. So.
Well, sure. So the city's concerned that we stay kind of who we are and that we don't change, the demographics don't change us so much that we become a place where we can't afford to live anymore.
Exactly.
Wow, that's wonderful. Well, thanks, Jessica. I think that's really provided an awful lot of context for our next conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have three guests with us this evening that are residents here in East Hampton that want to talk to us a little bit about their experiences with affordable housing. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves.
Okay, I'm Marvin Ward, and I live in Cottage Square, which is what used to be the Dye Works building at 15 Cottage Street. So I'm the first person to occupy my apartment, and I had to wait for the building to be finished to move in. Prior to that, I was living in Williamsburg, and I had reached the point where I couldn't really keep up with house, yard maintenance, and so on, because I'm handicapped with an artificial hip and other mobility issues. And I really wanted to come to East Hampton because of the rail trail, because I also ride bike, which for me is partially therapeutic. And I have known about East Hampton, known people in East Hampton for quite a number of years. In fact, I was present at the ribbon cutting ceremony of the rail trail. And I'm a member, and have been since it was founded, the Friends of the Manhattan Rail Trail. And I wanted to be center town so that I could also walk to the store for groceries, for example, and just walk in general. And the location with the pond nearby, knowing that the boardwalk was going up, was an additional enticement to be right there, and I love it.
Wonderful.
So.
Susan.
Yeah, my name is Susan Downing, and I live in Mountain View Condos on East Street in East Hampton, and I've lived there since January of 2006. In my family, we were the first ones, our unit was the first one to be completed, so I'm happy to say I was there from the very beginning, so 10 years ago, and before that I had lived in South Hadley for many years. And yeah, and I really love living in East Hampton too. I love living at the base of Mount Tom and we have an entrance to the bike path from the condo complex. And yeah, I was so happy to be living over here.
Wonderful. Alita.
Hi, I'm Alita Kennedy, and I'm one of the homeowners for the Habitat for Humanity homes over on East Street, and we're at the foot of the mountain there. And it's me and my grandson, and you know, I've been raising him myself since he was a baby. And it's made a huge difference in our lives financially. And I am very fond of the outdoors, and we're right at the base of Mount Tom. And we have Arcadia across the street, and I have, you know, bears and wolves and turkeys and wildcats and everything else. I'm happy as a clam.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's really a pleasure to have you here. And so a lot of times people kind of ask, so what's the benefit of affordable housing? How do you think it's helped? You, sure.
Okay.
We'll start with you, Marvin. Sure.
Okay, sure. I could not possibly have afforded with my income from Social Security and a very small pension from when I taught in New York State years ago to rent a market rate apartment. It simply isn't large enough income to do that. And so I wouldn't have been able to buy food. Now I don't have that problem because the rent is pretty much assured. I've already renewed my lease for the second year without a rise in it. And it just makes life a heck of a lot easier than it was when I was in my home. Even though I had no mortgage on my home, it was all paid off.
That's wonderful. So Susan, you were in market rate housing.
Correct.
But does this question relate to you at all?
You know, yeah, and I feel that I really enjoy living in the complex where we have the mixed, whatever you want to call it, the variety of units. Because I remember I was already living there when the people who wanted to buy those affordable units came around. I knew it was a lottery, and I was there the day that people came by to look at the units to see, you know, which ones they might, you know, be receiving if they, you know, were one that, I guess if they had won the lottery there to get in. And it was such a nice feeling to see my future neighbors, you know, because usually the neighbors, they come in one by one, you know, moving into a complex, and it was just a really nice feeling to say, here are these new people who are coming in, and I'm going to get to know them, and it was like an instant sort of neighborhood in a way that it wouldn't have been had people just bought the units one by one. So I really felt it was a nice sense of community that might not have developed otherwise.
So you get to meet your neighbors even before they were your neighbors.
Exactly, yeah, and it was really a really nice feeling.
That's
Yeah.
great. So Alita, you're living in a duplex, right? It's a two-family home?
Yeah, it's a shared lot.
Yeah.
Type of
So
deal.
how is Habitat's property there and the fact that it's affordable to you? Has that been a...
It's made a huge impact on our lives financially, you know, because we were living in apartments where the rent went up every single year, and you know, my income didn't. I live on Social Security and a little bit of welfare for my grandson, and that never changes. You know, very rarely does it go up, and the rent kept going up, and we kept getting more and more broke, and I was having to cancel doctor's appointments because I didn't have the money to buy gas for my car and that kind of stuff. So it's just made a big difference in that aspect. And like I said, I really do enjoy being at the foot of the mountain. That's something I haven't had for quite a while, is, you know, the exposure to the wildlife there.
Yeah, East Hampton, well, as you know, I'm the former mayor, and so I
Right.
guess I'll get on my soapbox for a moment.
Yes.
I love the idea that you're attracted to our community for what our community is, and I was a proponent of affordable housing because I agree that being able to live here in this very special place in a way that you can actually afford to live, and to have neighbors, diverse neighbors, who represent all aspects of the population and who are genuinely neighbors, and they're friendly and they want to be involved. It's just wonderful to hear it coming from folks who haven't lived here all their lives. And I really appreciate that part of it. You knew you were buying in a mixed unit, and
Yes.
and that didn't persuade you to do something different?
It didn't, and in fact, my income at the time was such that I could have myself potentially applied for the lottery. It was interesting. So I knew about it. I knew the contractor for the development, and I had just decided I needed to move sooner than it was going to be possible to go through the whole process, and so. Yeah, I thought, well, I didn't even really know what that meant at first, affordable housing. And so because I knew the contractor, I was able to find out about that. And I thought, yeah, this is great, because I could see that, I myself was someone, who might want to take advantage of something like that. So that made it easier for me to think, well, who might be in this position of wanting to take advantage of this? So, yeah, I didn't have concerns at all about it. Yeah.
And I think the idea that it's hard to get into affordable housing is something that maybe our viewers don't really understand
Right.
very well. There are lists of people. There are lots of people looking for individual units, and I suspect that the lottery process for Marvin and Alita has been very different. So Marvin, can you talk a little bit about?
Well, yes, of course. I wanted to speak to something Susan said also, in that I was also interested in not being in a monolithic community with all senior citizens. I just did not want to be. I wanted to be where there were also people with children, school-age kids, and middle-aged people. And I really love that aspect about Cottage Square. Having been a teacher, and the kids kind of relate to me, and it's really a lot of fun. And I'm about to turn 75, so I could have easily gone to a senior place, but I did not want to, and also because I'm still quite active. I think the lottery process for Cottage Square was probably a lot more complex than yours, Susan, because there are 50 units in Cottage Square. There were 3 different sizes and 3 different income levels, so that meant there were 6 lotteries. I was personally eligible to be in 4 of those if I chose to take a 1-bedroom unit, but I didn't want to because I write and I wanted a room for my materials. I write about music and I have a large collection of classical music CDs, and I had a room in my house for that activity and that collection, and I wanted to be able to keep that here, and I was able to. And so I went to the lottery when it was held back in 2014 in September, and I ended up for the 1-bedroom unit. I was way too far down on the list, but I was 8th for the 2-bedroom in my income level. And by the time we had to pick out our units in February of 2015, we could only see samples, we couldn't see the actual unit. I was number 1 because the people ahead of me had either had to go somewhere else because they had to have something sooner, or they were eliminated because obviously at the time of the lottery, not all of the screening was complete.
Got it. And I'm not familiar with Habitat's process. Is it similar?
Yes, it is. You go through a screening. I think it's mostly for financial eligibility at the time and composition of the family, how many people are in the family. Like my unit is, my part is a handicap accessible side, so you need to qualify for that too, which I was delighted because we were living on the 2nd floor. Wow. It's really hard to get your walker up and down the stairs, with or without groceries and laundry. So at any rate, so they go through that, and then they do a home visit where they come out and meet with the families, the potential candidates, and interview you and see what you're looking for and, that type of thing. They bring you out to the site to show you the location, and then you wait for a really long time for a determination on all this.
Yeah.
it's quite a process. It takes a lot of people to do this, you know. But, you know, I wanted to say, too, going back a little bit, I've always been very intrigued with East Hampton. We were living in Southampton, and the first thing that caught my interest was the artistic atmosphere and the cultural things, because I'm an artist myself. And I just wanted to be in the middle of all that, you know, and I haven't been able to do that for a long time, you know. And the attention that's paid to green space and having Arcadia right there and, you know, not tearing up the mountain and making things out of it that really shouldn't be done, you know. I just love that whole, the whole sentiment of what East Hampton's doing with its community and its land.
Well, thank
So-
you, and I want to thank all of you again for joining us this evening. I think that your insight into what affordable housing is so very important. I want to have one last opportunity if you want to add anything to the conversation. If there's something that you want to particularly mention that I haven't asked about or that you didn't think about mentioning?
Well, the fact that this building is at the entrance of the cultural district was certainly an attraction to me. But even though
Music.
that's more art than music, I'm also I go to art museums all the time and go to galleries and things, and I just love being there, too.
I would recommend Luthier's too.
Well, yes, but that's not really classical music.
It is not. Susan?
Yeah, I would just say, you know, I was thinking about, you know, you had asked earlier, you know, what's the importance of affordable housing? And so I was thinking about that and just thinking about the fact that, you know, where each of us lives is so important. You know, the home that, you know, that we come home to every day and that we spend so much time in is so important. It's so important for us to feel safe and secure and comfortable there. And you know, as you were mentioning, the financial pressures that were eased when
they're terrible.
you received the, you know, the opportunity. And so it seems to me, just in terms of our well-being and our happiness, having the opportunity to have the affordable housing in the community just really contributes to people being happier and less stressed out, and just a general better quality of life and better for our health and all of that. So there's so many benefits, I think, that go beyond simply the, you know, like the bottom line of finances. It's just that we have a happy
Sense of well-being.
sense of well-being,
Yeah,
and
I
we can
agree.
be happy and not worry about, you know, being out on the street because the rent goes up. So that's what it was, sort of, you know, in our hearts we can relax and be happy, and
The stress,
that's what
every
I
time
see
the rent
in
goes up, the stress was hideous.
right, and that's what I see at Mountain View, that everyone just seems happy, you know, that happy to be there and happy to be able to be there, and I think it just creates a wonderful atmosphere in the town.
Yeah, I think as you said, a sense of well-being.
Yep.
You know,
Truly,
It's
truly. Well, you
a
know,
comfort
especially
level.
for me, because, you know, I qualify for senior housing and all this other good stuff, but having a child, none of them have 2 bedrooms. And I wasn't about to let that go, you know. This is a package deal, you know. I've been looking for like 6, 7 years for an apartment that was not 2 stories or a house or anything, and I've looked into everything I could think of. And the other issue I had was if I did find something in, you know, like an apartment or something, and you go in to apply, and they like to see a certain debt-to-income ratio. And I didn't have any debts per se, but my expenses for housing, you know, were 60-some-odd% of my income right off the bat, you know. They wouldn't even talk to me. They wouldn't even let me put an application in. And I was seriously thinking about maybe trying to buy an RV and living in that if we could find a place to park it year-round. It's like, God, what next? A tent, you know? It's kind of hard to live in a tent.
Yeah, well, I'm really happy for that you were able to land in that wonderful Habitat
yeah.
property, and that Marvin, you found I think a great spot for you at 15 Cottage Street and the old Dye Works. And Mountain View, that's a wonderful project. It was one of the first condo projects in town, and I recall the permitting actually during that process, and I think it's just a wonderful project. And all of the affordable housing in East Hampton has really been done well, and we now get a chance with our next guest to talk a little bit about developing affordable housing and how do you set the table for the great results that we just heard about. And this is Joanne Campbell, the Executive Director of Valley Community Development Corporation. Thanks for joining us, Joanne.
Thanks for having me. So just for the audience, a little bit about Valley CDC. We're about to celebrate our 30th anniversary in 2017. And we basically focus on the creation and preservation of affordable housing. We do home ownership counseling for low and moderate income households, including first-time home buyers of any income. And we also work with homeowners who might be struggling financially or facing foreclosure. And that service is available throughout Hampshire County, but we specifically focus on East Hampton, Northampton, Amherst, and Hadley.
This part of the valley, sure.
Yes.
And so your organization is responsible for building some of the affordable housing in East Hampton. Did you face any challenges?
Right, so we are responsible for developing Parsons Village, a 38-unit family development on Parsons Street, which was completed last August. And all the families are living there now. And I think probably more broadly, the challenges of affordable housing varies based on the site that you choose. And so when we're looking for a site to develop, I mean, we're looking for lots of different things. So we're looking at zoning, we're looking at the topography of the site, we're looking at the location of the site, we're looking at the financial feasibility. Is there demolition involved? Is there relocation involved? So what's the community's feeling about affordable housing? Is the administration, the city council, or the select board, the mayor, the town manager, whether there's a partnership or there or not, what has the community done to identify what the need is for affordable housing? Because that makes it easier for an organization like Valley CDC to look at, because there's some evidence there that the community has already determined that there's a need for affordable housing, and therefore that is one of the reasons we're coming in to look for property to develop. And again, really depending on the site, you may have neighbors who are concerned, who are neutral, who are not sure whether this is a good thing for their neighborhood or not. And so that's also a challenge, and they usually call it NIMBY, not in my backyard. And so, we do try to work early on with the community and have some community meetings to explain what our potential plans are if we decide that we're going to move forward with a site.
So are there regulations? Is the state, federal government involved in any of this?
Yep, so a variety of funding sources. The Commonwealth's Department of Housing and Community Development is the state housing agency that oversees the development of housing and controls basically the financing of that. And they also control the funds that come in from federal dollars. Like there's, under HUD, there's some funding that comes in and that goes to the state. And so currently, DHCD, as it's called, is focused solely on rental housing. They have found, with limited resources available at the state level, that rental housing is the most needed housing currently. And so there's no funding available for homeownership housing. And so there's a competitive process that goes in across the state. You're competing with communities across the Commonwealth. So you do have to have, a project that's feasible, both financially as well as all the other, energy efficiency, close to transportation. I mean, it has a whole list of what the state wants to see housing developments look like.
So I think I understand, but I think for our viewers, why is getting money from the state government so important about affordable housing?
So it is expensive to build housing. I mean, we have the same challenges that private developers have. It's the same costs, the land costs or property costs. construction costs, all the trades, architects, we have to pay for all those. And so the state is providing dollars to help subsidize the development of that housing. So therefore, then we have less debt on the property. Therefore, we can then charge lower rents that serve folks generally in affordable rental housing, people who earn below 60% of the median income. So therefore, with less debt, private debt, from a bank or an affordable housing lender, which is an amortizing, we're paying it every month, we can charge less rents. So it's subsidizing the building of the property.
So in simple terms, your mortgage is lower, so you can afford to charge less.
Yes.
And that lower cost is what makes it affordable. And so is that permanent? Is it always going to be affordable housing?
And the state is pretty much saying in perpetuity. So at 99 years, that's what they want to see. So we work with the local communities where if the communities have, like East Hampton does, Community Preservation Act funds, East Hampton wants to see in perpetuity as well. So with low-income housing tax credits, and they're looking for in perpetuity, which is a large way for investors to provide equity for the building of affordable housing. So all those projects need to be in perpetuity.
So that really does mean that the affordable housing that's created through these programs is affordable housing that will be here long after we are.
Yes, it is.
And not a get-rich-quick scheme that has been devised by some unscrupulous developer, as I've heard.
Well, we do get paid developer fee and overhead in order to work through these developments. And just for instance, we probably started talking to the owner of the Parsons Village site in 2009 and started working with the city right away in 2010, and that development didn't go into, people didn't move into their homes until 2015. So it does take a long time. Some of the challenges are being able to find property and an owner that you can work with who's willing to wait. And I think some of the challenges are, as Jessica mentioned earlier, that East Hampton's a very desirable community, and prices are jumping over the past couple of years, not just for looking for property to develop affordable housing, but for first-time home buyers who are starting to be locked out of the market because the pricing is escalating.
And market rate rents are going up, and it is getting more difficult. We've heard, I think, very eloquently from the residents and why they saw East Hampton as a great place to come. But as a developer, what attracted you? I know East Hampton is a part of your territory, but
yeah, many of the same things that the folks mentioned is it's a community where people want to live. It has a vibrant downtown. It has an arts and cultural community. It has services. It has transportation. It's close to the highway. And so a lot of folks want to be here because there's so much to offer here.
And your properties go through a lottery, I presume, just as we heard about the other properties?
Yes, so the same thing as Marvin mentioned is that, there's that initial screening for tenants is a lottery, and it's split up based on unit size and income size. It's a long screening process. It's not for the lighthearted. It's a pretty challenging process, and we do like to let people know that there are people there to help them if they need help with the applications and things of that sort. So for folks in the audience, people who are interested in living, whether it's Cottage Street or Parsons or the Housing Authority, people just need to get in contact with those organizations and ask for an application so they can be put on a waiting list. And I always suggest to people to get on a waiting list, even if you're not thinking about it or you need something right now, is you don't know what your situation might be in 6 months or a year. You might need that unit. If you're on the waiting list, you can always say no if you've found something that serves you as well.
Right.
But there's no harm in being on a waiting list.
And no stipulation that you absolutely have to take
Absolutely not.
an apartment
No,
if you are on the list and
Right.
you're selected.
It's like anyone who's looking for housing anywhere. You always have choices. to say whether you want to live there or not. And I think because Parsons and Cottage were coming online somewhat around the same area, and we had people saying, well, they wanted more of a downtown setting, or someone wanted a more suburban setting. So Parsons was a little more open, and a playground and townhouses, and Cottage Street is a mill building, which is a more urban. So it was interesting to have people think about what they wanted in housing, and that they could have a choice.
They had some variety when they were looking, so that's wonderful. We've heard how important affordable housing is to the residents, and clearly Valley Community Development Corporation is in the business of making sure that people can get into affordable housing and developing some of it. And I know that you also offer some programs for first-time home buyers, and you're a great resource for folks in the 4 communities that you serve directly. From an organizational perspective, what's so important about affordable housing?
Well, I mean, obviously it's one of our, part of our mission, and I think it's, again, what the folks who are living in town who expressed a little while ago. It's the stability of having a place where the rent or the mortgage that you're paying is reasonable based on your income, alleviates the pressure of wondering how you're going to pay your bills or what bills you're going to pay. And having the stability of home allows you then to focus on other aspects of your life, whether it's raising your children or looking for a better education or looking for a better job. It takes that worry, and that maybe not totally. It's not, there's still...
You still have to pay the rent.
Still have to pay the rent. There's still a struggle with that because your car might break down, or but it alleviates some of the pressure of that, and it's you hear it when people talk about how it just eliminates that worry from them and allows them to focus on other aspects of their life, and they can be happy and relieved that they can focus on just living and enjoying life as best they can.
Oh, it's wonderful. So I think that we've gotten a pretty good idea of what affordable housing is this evening, why people who are able to get into housing they can afford, whether it's subsidized, whether it's market rate. The sense that you get when you're in a safe and secure environment. I certainly want to thank everyone who's participated in today's program, including our guests and all of the wonderful staff here at East Hampton Media. We all want to live in a safe and secure environment, and I truly believe that our community and all of its citizens benefit from the diversity that's provided through the affordable housing and market rate housing that's been made available here in East Hampton. East Hampton is a small community. We really are, as I think Jessica mentioned, we're getting built out. There's very little space left for us to be developing. And it's wonderful that we have the opportunity to see development coming into the community that is fit for everyone, so that there's a place that everyone can afford here in East Hampton. I hope that this discussion has given you a better insight on what affordable housing is and what housing is like here in East Hampton. You should take advantage of the opportunities that these kinds of programs provide, and that the developers and the permitters and the neighbors that you're going to find in the housing projects here in East Hampton and quite truly across the Commonwealth. If you'd like any further information beyond what we've been able to provide for you tonight, you can contact the East Hampton Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership through the City Planning Office. The number there is 413-529-1406. Thank you for joining us.